Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is a glorious Friday. Today, we're going to be talking about how to crush the job interview for 2022. So, I only have 15 minutes because I got an important business meeting I got to get to soon, so I want to keep this quick, but really wanted to help a lot of people. There's been more people reaching out to me as the channel keeps expanding. Getting emails a lot asking about some of the tools I've been recommending, some people asking for one-on-one talks. That's great. I love to help, happy to help, and I'll do the best. I can't answer it all, everybody. Got to be very specific with your questions sometimes. But today we're going to talk about how to crush the job interview. I know a lot of people have been looking into how to do their MBA, how to do cybersecurity, basically just life skills. And you can use these techniques on any type of job interview. And for people that don't know, I'm a hiring manager for a few different companies, and do interviews all day, every day. And I know I've been on both sides of the table, so I know what works and what doesn't. And if you ever want one-on-one coaching on your resume review, mock interview, career consulting of any type, we do a full hour. And I can put that in the description if you want to find out some more. So today, we're going to be talking about how to prepare for the job interview, common questions that the interview might ask you, how to answer, talk about salary, and how to do a proper follow-up, and just some general tips on this. If you want more information and really deep dive into this, I really recommend reaching out to me. I will include my contact details in the description below. Feel free to reach out at any time, okay? So, let's jump right into it. By the way, I do like to do these as like one and done, and I'm short on time today, so sorry if I speak a little fast, but let's jump right into it. How to do an effective interview, how to crush it on your job interview. I will let you guys know, just so you know, I recently got a new role, very generous role, leading an entire talent agency. So definitely know what I'm talking about on that sense. But I've also, if you think about it, I had to go through interviews as well. I had to go through the interviews. I know what works and able to land the job. And part of my thing is doing interviews pretty much all day, every day. So we'll talk about that. So effective interviews. Let's talk about kind of just the first steps. Number one, you want to make sure that you know who you're interviewing. There's definitely a lot of candidates, especially if they have different things going on, they don't look up who they're actually going to be interviewing. And sometimes they even ask, what company is this? over the phone, which is not really a great start. The whole point of this thing is to stand out. The average job advertisement right now gets about over 200 applications per job ad. So think about that. You got to stand out amongst 200 other applicants. So hopefully with this series, you'll be able to do that as well. But I want you to consider also, you got to be aware of the competition. You got to be able to stand out. You got to be able to shine. And these are techniques to help you do that. So know first off who you'll be interviewing. Go on LinkedIn, look up the person, find out a little bit of information. And you want to find uncommon commonalities. And if you have notes, write that down. Uncommon commonalities. Look at little things that you can touch on when you first thing. The whole thing is like sales. You want to establish rapport. So look up if they went to the same school as you, have the same interests as you, have the same hobbies as you. If you have a brother-in-law or somebody, a friend who has similar interests in you, or something to touch up on, something they're interested in that you can ask about. That's a key ingredient that's going to make you stand out and just set the tone for the entire interview as lessening the tension, breaking the ice, and they're going to remember you a lot more, which is very, very key. When they look at the other 10 plus candidates that they have on their board, you're going to be the one that sticks out just from that little thing. So do the extra effort, go online, look up a little bit about them, have some talking points that you can address on. And if you both have shared interests, that's even better. So first off, find the uncommon commonalities. You need to know also the details of the role beforehand. Spend that extra 10 minutes before the interview looking up more about the company, knowing the details of the role, and each one of the responsibilities of the role, you want to make sure that you can address on. You have a story that you have prepared beforehand talking about each responsibility. So if you go on like a job description, they list out, here's the expectations, here's the responsibilities. For each one of those things, have an idea on some interaction or story or project or obstacle that you've done previously that you can touch upon if they ask you about it. And I would really recommend practicing 2 to 3 specific stories on things that you've learned or obstacles overcome in your last role that actually really help you do this new job as well or even better. So that's number, I don't know, but number 3. Thing is also when you get on these things, even if you're on the phone or doing a video or in person, you want to make sure you're smiling. It is amazing to me on how many people don't jump on the interview with a positive attitude. Attitude is almost everything, but you want to make sure that you have about 10% more energy than the person who's talking to you. Okay? If you're lower energy, like think about this. If this is their energy and this is your energy, if your energy's lower, you're bringing them down. Okay, and it's not a great mode to be in. It doesn't mean you're going to get kicked out of the job or the running for it, but you want to make sure it's better to be a little bit more energy than the other person. So we're really mirroring and feeling and calibrating how they are, being a little bit more energy. Too much energy, you might freak them out. This is the same in like if you just networking in general. Too much energy, you might freak them out. Too much lower energy, you're bringing them down. You want to be about 10% more energy than the person you're interacting with. And that's just a rule of thumb, okay? The recruiter is following a script. They have a worksheet. They have talking points. They have everything that they have to jot down on a checklist and fill it out and put you in their applicant tracking system. Okay, you don't need to know all that, but just know that they are following a script and they have to get through multiple interviews per day for the same position. Whether it's their HR, hiring manager, whoever, they're talking to multiple people and they're following a usual guideline. So the key is you want to go a little bit off script, okay? You don't want to just follow the same routine because sometimes people, especially recruiters, get into a routine and you can tell, like they've said the same lines over and over and over again. It's just second nature. You really want to make sure that you're going a little bit off the script and get them to kind of the whole point is to get you in remembrance, that you stand out from the pack, you stand out from the crowd, you stand out from the other candidates that way. So going a little bit off script and giving them stories as well as asking about themselves, asking about the person interviewing you at the end. These are really big things that first off, establish rapport. Second off, have a great interview. Third off, asking questions about the person interviewing you too are great ways to have stand out. So a great quote that I always heard about was, facts tell, stories sell. Okay, now what does that mean? When you're being asked different interview questions, and it depends on the role obviously, but sometimes it's good to know your business metrics. If you're interviewing for sales, for example, you definitely want to know closing rate, what's your lead generation, what's your sales metrics, revenue generated, things like that. Same in recruiting, you got to know certain metrics. So it's good to look up on Google a little bit of the metrics maybe the industry you're applying for looks at or the job you're interviewing for looks at. Looking up a few different metrics that way so that you can kind of wiggle them into the fabric of the stories that you tell. For example, when I talk about this last one, I talk about, hey, I was able to increase this company over 300%. We started off with myself and I was able to increase the entire department by 7 people. Things like that. Numbers are good to stick into the recruiter's mindset. So they have something that they can write down. And then if you elaborate on the story on, how it happened, that's really, really good too. And you want to make sure that you're adding brevity. I don't mean talking forever. Okay, they're following a schedule. They only want to be, especially for the first interview, they only want to be on the phone with you for 15 minutes. The second interview, that's the one that's a lot more of their investment of time, and that's going to be 30 minutes to an hour. But the first one, they're just looking to make sure that you're okay on paper, you're as good in paper, and if you're worth going to a second interview. And obviously this is just a rule of thumb. There are differences if you're referred into the company or if you know the owner, for example. But make sure you're using brevity. When you're telling these stories or answering questions in a mock interview, make sure your answer is under 2 minutes, okay? So make sure you're answering your answers honestly. Do not lie. Be genuine, be transparent, and talk about some of the mistakes and what you've learned from that and how you're going to address that in the future, okay? You want to tell stories about overcoming obstacles. Nobody has a perfect record, okay? And I know a lot of recruiters think that's looking for the perfect candidate. I could get into a whole spiel about this, but nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. You want to obviously have many past accomplishments and successes on your resume, but also what you're learning about when you're excited about in the future. Okay, so 3 common questions that usually come up. Number 1, why are you looking? Number 2 is like strengths and weaknesses that you have. And number 3 is salary. So let's talk a little bit about that, okay? I am running low on time, so just gotta be wary of that. Got about 5 minutes, okay? So first one, we talk about why are you looking? So be honest. It really depends on where you're at. If you got laid off, for example, if you got fired, that's a thing that you need to really address, okay? And I would really recommend, if that's your answer, reach out to me specifically so we can talk about it in detail. But a good rule of thumb is that you're looking for a change. You have certain life benchmarks you want to do, or maybe just in the role you've grown as fast as you can and you're looking for new opportunities. Now they're going to want to say about like, when are you looking to start? Why is it? How well do you get along with others? And you want to make sure you prepare for these questions. But a big thing is that you've learned a lot at your current job. You feel like you've kind of reached the max that you're going to go, and now you're looking for a change. And this is the things that you're looking for. Okay. So really trying to point the direction of the conversation into the future a lot of the ways. It's not trying to, don't try to step aside too much. You want to make sure you acknowledge where you are with the current role. Like, you've reached these certain points, you've learned these certain attributes, you've learned these certain characteristics. And this is kind of what you're looking for in the next role. So make sure you're addressing both sides of that equation. Number 2 is strengths and weaknesses. Make sure you definitely elicit your strengths. You're demonstrating that value that you can bring to the table. And you want to make sure that beforehand, you might want to make a list of strengths and weaknesses. What are the things about you that you know? I'll let you guys know that, I do think I'm really good at emotional intelligence. I think I'm really good at sales and marketing and business development. I think I'm really good at operations and knowing about the metrics. However, I do want to know my biggest weakness is disorganization. But it's something I know about, and here are the steps that I'm doing to get better. I have a priority manager. I make lists every single morning. I, at the end of the day, spend 10 minutes to make sure I write the list for the next day. Taking that extra time. But I still, if I open up a computer, I have 50 tabs, and I got to learn to close those tabs. So organization is a big thing. So being upfront, the big key thing is telling them that you're aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. So if you can say what your strengths are and why you're better than a lot of other people, that you've noticed your natural ability and you work on that ability, but also telling them your strengths. Telling them about your weaknesses. Telling about the areas of improvement that you are, and you're taking actions around that. And you also, how this job can also kind of use both sides of that coin. Okay? Very important to do. Number 3 is salary. The big question. That's the big one that everyone wants to do. This is a very tricky subject, and you really have to feel it out. Okay? Sometimes they'll already have the salary posted, in which case you don't really need to kind of ask about it too much. If it's not posted, it is courteous to ask at the end instead of the beginning, okay? Asking flat out at the beginning, you're just going to turn off the recruiter, okay? And you want to make sure that you want them to be your cheerleader when they're presenting you to the leadership of the company or the CEO or whoever, okay? You want them to be, and you're like, hey, here's all the people I interviewed. This person stands out. That's the ideal scenario. So salary, what do you say? Well, first off, do your research. Do your research. I know there's a lot of free resources with LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, looking at the different salary ranges. Now, you want to look up, you want to make sure you understand the cost of living in your area, because that can actually add an extra 10% or 20%. You want to look at benefits that they're offering. Full benefits, like 401k, medical, everything combined, that's like a 20 grand value. So make sure you're taking these things into consideration, and make sure that when you look at the entire range of salaries, ideally you're positioning yourself a little bit more, but not the maximum, okay? If you do the maximum, they're not going to be able to fit that budget. If you do the minimum, they think they can get you for a steal, but you might not feel great about yourself. So feel what is good to you, but when you answer them, give them a range. Give them a general range, a little bit more than maybe what the average is in the market. That's a usually good rule of thumb range. So for example, if you're a salesperson, right? Give them a range, I'm looking between 60 and 80. If you're a cybersecurity engineer, you might want to give a range of, I'm looking between 100 and 115. Usually 10 to 20K of a range in between, so, okay? And you want to make sure you give a range, because usually when I talk to people, what happens is they're going to split the difference and give you that middle one. So always give a range about what's acceptable to you. Their job is to get you at the best price for them, and your job obviously is to get as best salary as you can. But remember, you got to deliver on the goods, so just take that into consideration. Little other tip is that if they come back at you with the offer letter on salary, always say thank. If it's a very fair salary, I would say yes. If it's a salary that you feel that you're in the running, you feel good, you can say, hey, thank you. I'm going to take 24 hours to think about it. And then you can actually add, hey, I would actually prefer 10% more. 10% is the rule of thumb. Okay. Anything more than that, you're just being greedy. So take that into consideration. If you want private coaching where I walk you through this process, or if you have an offer and you want to know how to answer, feel free to reach out to me about that and I can answer that about that. So at the end of it all, make sure you have 2 to 5 questions for the other person you're interviewing, okay? You can ask them how they like the job. Okay, what are the biggest things that excite them? Is this a new position or replacement? What's the future of the company? What does a successful candidate look like? But I would say that 95% of all the candidates I talk to they don't have questions at the end. And this is a great area where you can find out information and also stand out. I am actually got to get going, but I hope this has been very, very, very helpful. Make sure to send a thank you note to the person who did the interview for you. Add them on LinkedIn. Also attach a note on there as well. So big things. If you want some additional coaching one-on-one, really getting into this, feel free to reach out to me. We can arrange that. If you also want to just elevate your life, I'm into self-improvement and I have a lot of great tools that I use. Some people have seen other videos and have reached out to me on those tools, especially the Your Wish is Your Command series, completely free. Something that really changed my life, as well as technology that I use to really crush it in business. We can set up a complimentary call, 15-20 minutes, and I'd be happy to share that information. Or if you just want to connect, feel free to reach out to me. I'll include my details in the link below, in the description below, and hope you guys have a great weekend. Cheers.